Hi guys, welcome to this video. If you are new to me as a teacher, my name is Marielle. Welcome. For today's video, I'm going to be showing you the do's and don'ts of the foundational poses in yoga. So we'll be moving through our vinyasas, so from down dog to chaturanga to up dog, as well as high lunge, warrior two, reverse warrior, and how we transition back through our vinyasa. So the first pose I want to teach you or walk you through is downward facing dog. So in a downward facing dog, your hands are shoulder distance apart, your feet are hip distance apart. Now something I want you to pay attention to in your downward facing dog is as you come forward into a plank position, you shouldn't want to move your feet forwards or backwards. Now a lot of times what happens when we transition from a plank to downward facing dog, we find that it's a lot harder for our heels to release down to the ground, so the first thing that people do is that they walk their feet forward. Now I want to challenge you to keep your feet where they are from that transition from plank to downward facing dog. Now from here, these are some of the don'ts that you'll see in class. For my hypermobile yogis, what you tend to see is the chest melting, the head hanging, and everything sort of just collapsed down to the ground. It's a nice chest opener, but it's definitely pretty intense on the upper back. It's not great for the head and the neck. And you're also not finding strength in the posture, which is something that hypermobile yogis tend to struggle with. Now, on the opposite end, if you're a little bit stiff, what tends to happen is that as you try to bring your heels down to the ground, you start rounding out through the back because you don't have that mobility, that flexibility in the body in order to lower the heels to the ground. So here are the things that I would suggest you should do in a downward facing dog. Now for my hypermobile yogis that go from here, I want you to draw the ribs and the navel in. Make sure that your head, that your ears are in line with your biceps. You push the ground away, lift the pelvis up towards the sky, and then gently lower the heels towards the ground. So now you're finding strength in the posture as you spread the weight of the body evenly between the hands and the feet. On the opposite end, if you find that you're rounding out through your back trying to get the heels to the ground, what I suggest you do is keep a micro bend in the knees so that you can maintain the length in the spine. And if you're stiff in the shoulder blades, you can then start to press the chest towards the thighs so you find a bit of opening in the chest and that length throughout the spine. Now from your downward facing dog, making sure that your fingers are spread nice and wide so you're getting a lot of coverage on the ground, either index or middle fingers pointing forward. Energetically, you want your forearms to be squeezing in towards one another. As the forearms squeeze in towards one another, you'll notice that your shoulders begin to externally rotate. So you'll hear a lot of teachers use things like wrap your triceps. So the elbow, the eye of your elbow starts to point backwards as you wrap your triceps, creating space between the ears and the shoulders and making sure that your ears stay in line with those biceps. Now not only does the navel draw in, but we're trying to hug our ribs in as well, reaching the hips up towards the ceiling and then energetically heels down towards the ground. Now, from our downward facing dog, we come forward into a plank position. A lot of times what you'll see happen in a plank position is maybe retraction of the shoulder blades, maybe not a lot of strength in the core, so the hips start to come down. Maybe you're looking down, maybe you're looking too high up. Now a strong plank position, the way that you would like to do it correctly, is again from downward facing dog, trying not to move the feet, making sure that the shoulders stack over the wrists. We push the ground away. So notice that I am separating my shoulder blades. I am hugging the ribs and the navel in towards the spine. Now my legs are engaged, so I am squeezing the glutes, energetically drawing my thighs in towards one another. You'll notice that if you have a strong plank position, as we move through Chaturanga, you have so much more support of the rest of the body. You'll find that the shoulders don't take as much weight as as you begin to bend the elbows. So, from our strong plank position, the next transition is Chaturanga. Now obviously if you don't have the shoulder strength to move through Chaturanga, the best option is to lower the knees down to the ground, and maybe chest, chin as well. Otherwise, I suggest you do a push-up with your knees on the floor so that you can build that upper body strength. However, for those of us that are moving through Chaturanga, here are the do's and the don'ts. From plank position, what tends to happen, the easiest option, is that we bend the elbows backwards, we lower probably further than we should, and then we lift ourselves up. Now if you notice, my elbows went beyond my ribs. Chances are that I'm putting too much weight into the shoulders, which can create injury. And my elbows are no longer stacking over my wrists. They went backwards. Now this is a lot harder, and it's taken me a long time to get to this place, but the correct way to do a Chaturanga is from your plank position, you shift your weight forward, so you're actually planching. So if you look, I'm going a little bit beyond the wrists, because as I bend my elbows, I want those elbows to stack over the wrists. Now as I bend the elbows, I'm also looking not to go beyond the ribs. So a lot of people tend to bend a lot further than they should. Now if you watch from here, our next transition is into upward facing dog. So from our plank position, we shift the weight forward, we bend the elbows halfway, and then lift ourselves up through upward facing. Here is the don't for upward facing. A lot of times, and again this falls into the hypermobile category, but one of them is my thighs are on the ground, I'm pinching my lower back, and my head is reaching backwards. You will notice that my shoulders are up to my ears. There is no strength in my legs to support my lower back, which means that I'm completely compressing that lower lumbar region. I'm also pinching my neck as I lift my head up towards the sky. Now it might look a bit prettier in pictures to have that rounding position, but in actuality, if you want to keep your body strong, you want to keep everything nice and safe, as you move through upward facing dog, nothing touches the ground but the tops of your feet. Your glutes are engaged, so you protect your lower back, you squeeze the inner thighs towards one another. Now my shoulders are over my wrists, I'm pushing the ground away, lengthening through my neck so I'm not compressed here, and my gaze is forward so that I grow through the crown of the head. Alright, now from here we move back to our downward facing dog. One of the things I do want to highlight is what is happening with your feet as you transition through these movements. If you are new to your yoga practice, rolling over the toes can feel quite uncomfortable. That doesn't mean that you have to do it. So an option as you move through each transition is when you bend the elbows, come onto the tops of the feet, and then just lift the chest. Likewise, as you come into downward facing dog, tuck the toes, squeeze the hands and feet towards one another so that your core is lifting you up and back, downward facing dog. Now, I'm going to take you through some drills that will help you with each one of these positions, because obviously there are certain things that we need to work on in order to do them a little bit better. Chaturanga, we need to build that shoulder strength. Upward facing dog, we want to have the mobility in our chest so that we can have a nice open chest. And we'll do a couple of things for our downward facing dog as well. So stay tuned. Now, one of the things we challenge with when we're new to our practice is mobility in our ankles. So as I talk to you here, I want you to come to sit on your heels. Now this alone might be incredibly difficult for you to do. If you're used to it, it might take a while for you sitting here so you can do other exercises like wrist exercises where you just open and close the hands, creating that strength in the forearm muscles. It might seem like nothing, but you're going to start to notice that your shins are getting a little bit sore, that your toes are probably a little bit uncomfortable, and definitely your forearms are going to start to fire up. stay here for a little bit longer. We'll keep opening and closing the wrists for another 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So shake out the wrists. We're going to release the toes, so that's going to feel really good. And now going in the opposite direction, so maybe just circle out the wrists a little bit because they're going to feel a little intense. And then bringing your hands behind you, fingers pointing forwards. Maybe this is as far as you can go, but if you can, shift your weight into your hands, start to lift the knees up off the ground. So we're getting a really deep stretch into our ankles here. Taking one more breath, and then releasing yourself back down. Now this is an exercise that I suggest you repeat maybe 2 or 3 times. So tucking the toes under, sitting on your heels, arms up to the sky, and just opening and closing your hands so that you're working both your ankles and your wrists, which is something that is important, obviously, in your downward facing dog. Again, if you're new to yoga, your wrists are going to be something that feel a lot of strain because our bodies weren't created for us to be putting so much weight on our hands. So it is really important for you to do some wrist exercises to strengthen and to stretch those areas. So I'm already starting to burn in my forearms, so we'll hold for another 3, 2, shake out. Release the toes, sit back on the heels. Again, you can maybe do some little stretches, bringing the hands in either direction. Should feel quite nice. You can also do some little movements like this, going in the other direction. And then bring your hands behind you once again. Shift your weight into your hands. Lift the knees up. So getting a really deep stretch. Remember that we want to straddle the line of discomfort, but you never want to cross that line and go into pain. If anything feels properly painful, please stay away from it. One last time, we tuck the toes, sit on our heels, reach the arms up, open and close our hands. Sometimes it takes a while for you to feel these exercises. Sometimes it happens immediately. So only take things as far as feels good to you. We'll stay for another 5, 4, 3, 2. Release the hands, release the feet. Shake it out. One final time, we take our hands behind us. We start to lift the knees, get a little stretch. Breathe into those areas of tension or discomfort, and slowly release yourself down to the ground. So those were 2 exercises for us to maintain wrist strength and mobility, as well as our ankles and our toes in downward facing dog. Now the next posture is plank position. Now, if you find Chaturanga to be challenging, you need to build that upper body strength. One of the best ways to do this, and it's also a phenomenal core exercise. Okay. So just holding your plank position is a fantastic way for you to build that upper body strength, but making sure that you're doing it correctly. So we are pushing the ground away, drawing the navel in, making sure that those hips aren't lifting high. You want them to draw down, but you're also not sinking to the ground. So you're engaging your glutes, the legs are nice and strong. We hold here for another 3, for 2, for 1. You can lower the knees down, maybe take a child's pose as you rest. Now another strong exercise for building that upper body strength is also coming onto the forearms and just taking a nice forearm plank. Now from both of these options, from plank and forearm plank, you can also shift the weight forward and back. Once again, adding more weight into the shoulders as you come forward. We'll do this for another 3, for 2, and 1. Release the knees down. Take a little child's pose. Now one last exercise that is great is alternating between the 2. So coming onto the forearms in our forearm plank, and then bringing one hand up and the other, lower the forearm and the other, lift up changing sides. Lift up, release, down. Try to keep as much stability as you can. So putting weight into the feet as well, keeping the legs nice and strong. Lower the knees and release. I definitely feel that one in my arms. Repeating all of those exercises 2 or 3 times to really build up the body strength. And then one last one. I think I said the last one was the last one, but this one's really the last one, that I think is fantastic. I work on it myself. Is coming into a plank position, but spreading the feet a little bit wider so that you can have the support of opposite foot, opposite hand. Now pressing into my left hand, my right foot, I'm trying to keep my pelvis as stable as possible. You can even put a block on your back to see if you can maintain it there. We bring our right hand to left shoulder and down. Left hand to right and down. I'm already shaking. Right to left and down. Left to right. Doing this one more time. Right side, left side, and release. Maybe this time bringing the knees together, arms wrapping back. You get a nice opening through the shoulder blades. You get to relax those delts, the shoulder muscles. All right. So that was upper body strength. Now, again, as we move into bending the elbows, I would say that one of the best exercises is just doing push-ups with your knees on the ground, trying to maintain as good a form as you can. So squeezing the inner thighs, engaging the glutes, tucking the pelvis, drawing the navel and the ribs in. Got a little bit too far. And then just bending the elbows without dipping down. So make sure that you keep that chest nice and open and lift back up. Come down. So if you notice, from my knees to my head, I am moving in one straight line as I bend. A lot of times what happens is we want to do these kind of things, so our butt comes out. I want you to keep that straight line, that strength in the body, so that you remember it when you move through Chaturanga, and then just keep working on push-ups like this. All right, my arms are definitely feeling the pain. So the next one's going to feel quite nice, because instead of building on the strength, I want us to focus on opening. So obviously as we move through upward facing dog, we want to have that shoulder mobility to create expanse through our chest and shoulder area. So now that we are still on our shins, just come to lie down on your belly. The first posture we're going to work with is Sphynx pose. So both forearms on the ground, like equal signs, they are parallel to one another. I want you to, instead of lift through the upper body, because you're going to start to feel a bit of pinch, a bit of tension in the lower back, I want you to press the palms into the ground, pull energetically the hands back. So instead of lifting up through our lower back, our belly's actually on the ground. You are pulling the shoulders back, and we're starting to open up through the upper thoracic, through the upper back and the chest. So that lower back shouldn't be feeling any tension here. You should feel a pretty nice stretch through the abdominal wall. Once again, try to find length through the neck so you're not completely compressing shoulders to ears. Engage the glutes if you are feeling that lower lumbar. Taking one more breath here. And releasing ourselves down. Maybe just shake it out for a moment. And then as we come back through center, I just want you to push yourself back into a tabletop position, allowing your hips to stack over your knees. The next pose we're going to work with is puppy dog pose. So reaching the arms forward, hips up to the sky, maybe chin or forehead to the ground. Now instead of just staying here, I want you to come up onto the fingertips. Again, feeling that lift through the arms, but melting the chest down towards the ground. You'll start to feel a nice opening, a nice stretch through the sides of the body. One more breath here. And then slide yourself back onto your belly. Create that little pillow. And give yourself a little shake out. Now, we're working on upward facing dog here. One of the things I neglected to mention is obviously if you're working with knees, chest, chin, your transition is going to be into Cobra as opposed to upward facing dog. Now, as we move through knees, chest, chin to Cobra, we are releasing down and then sliding forward. But notice that everything's on the ground for Cobra. Your hands are either side of your chest. The elbows are drawing in towards one another. And you are energetically pulling the hands back like we did in Sphynx and opening the chest. Now here, you should be feeling the entire back chain engage. So those back muscles are on. We're not pinching the neck. We're looking forward, growing through the crown of the head, and then release yourself back down. We can do that 2 more times. So coming up through a low cobra, squeeze the elbows, engage the back muscles, and release yourself back down. One last time, squeeze the elbows, lift the head of the chest, engage the back muscles. Tuck the toes, hips to heels, downward facing dog. All right, yogis, the last thing that I want us to work on is that transition from upward facing to downward facing dog. Now, a lot of times, because we get into habit, or maybe our mind starts to wander, the easiest thing for us to do is to push ourselves back. If you really want to have the right engagement in the body, it's your core that is lifting the hips up and back, not the arms that are just pushing you back. So I want you to feel that sensation from upward facing dog. Now I'm pulling my feet towards me and I'm drawing my hands backwards so that as I start to lift up, I am engaging my core muscles, and those core muscles are what's helping me transition back into downward facing dog. It's not the same as just pushing back. Pushing back is a lot easier, but again, if you really want to be balancing between strength and flexibility, you really want to keep yourself as mindful as possible as we move through these foundational poses. These are the basic poses in yoga. They're incredibly challenging, but because we repeat them so often, we really do fall into patterns. And sometimes when it becomes easy, you're no longer working, and you're no longer growing, you're no longer evolving, developing. So even if you are a seasoned yogi, it's always good to come back to these basic poses to see how you can take them further. So moving through the full vinyasa, from downward facing dog, we come forward into a plank. We shift the weight forward, bend the elbows. We come onto the tops of the feet, lengthen through the crown of the head, glutes engage, squeeze hands and feet together, lift the hips, up and back, downward facing dog. All right, guys. Next up, we're going to be moving through some of the standing postures. I'll catch you then. Alright guys, welcome back to this video where we are working on the foundational poses in yoga. Previously I took you through a vinyasa where you move from down dog, chaturanga, up dog, back to down dog. Now we're going to move through some of the standing postures. I will preface this part by saying that in my personal practice and in my teachings, I don't teach Warrior One. It's personal reasons. I don't have anything against teachers who do teach it. I just find that the alignment in Warrior One can be incredibly challenging if you're new to the practice. It is also difficult to be able to square the hips off, press into the outer edge, to do a lot of the things that we want to do. And I find that we are more prone to injury when we're not doing things properly. So for the sake of my practice and what I want to teach you, we're going to start with a high-level lunge, which I would say is a variation to Warrior One. So just for those of you that are entirely new to the practice, Warrior One has you bending the front knee, front heel in line with back heel, back foot is angled out to the side, your hips are squared forwards, so it's a pretty tough adjustment. Arms up to the sky, fingers together, gaze to the thumbs. Now in your high lunge, where that heel would be, you're actually lifting the heel up, and you can even separate your feet a little wider, meaning that in your high-level lunge, you have the stability to keep yourself balanced rather than standing on a tightrope that has you wobbling. Within that balance, you can then focus on the strength of the legs that allow you to ground down, and then focus on the upper body that allows you to lift up. So from our high-level lunge, our feet are hip distance apart. You're on the ball of your back foot. The front knee bends to a 90-degree angle. Eventually, you want to start to work towards getting that thigh almost parallel to the ground. Your tailbone is pulling you downwards, so it can help to bend the right knee so that you get the alignment in the front leg. Keep that pulling sensation downwards, but straighten the back leg out so that you get that nice stretch through your right hip flexor. Right heel is pressing backwards. Once you have the grounding in the lower half, ribs and navel draw in towards one another. Now, one of the don'ts in your high lunge is that you'll see people doing this. So we might be drawing the belly in, but the ribs are flaring out. That back knee is bending. So, or you're lifted too high, or you've come too low. You want to feel the squeeze between the feet that keeps the energy rising inwards and upwards. Feet are grounding downwards, lifting through the crown of the head. Ribs and navel draw in. Arms reach high to the sky, and we maintain that external rotation of the shoulders as our gaze stays straight ahead. Now from here, we move into our warrior two position. You might want to wiggle the feet around a bit. Now what helps with warrior two is some of these mats that have a straight line going down them, because you want your heel, your front heel, to be in line with your back arch. That front knee, once again, is bending to a 90-degree angle. Make sure that it's not further behind or going beyond the ankle. Keep it stacked directly above. We have a tendency in warrior two to dip that front knee inwards. Our goal is to press the knee out so that we maintain the expanse of our hips. You can even angle your feet out a little bit if you struggle with that dip in the knee. Now, the weight of your back foot is towards the outer edge so that your inner arch is lifting upwards. You don't want to be collapsing to the inside of that back foot. We sink into the hips. We have the grounding downwards and then the lifting upwards. So we're opened up to the sides, the fingers reach away from one another, gaze to your front middle finger, and we lengthen through the crown of the head. Now that energy that we have created in our lower half remains exactly the same as we flip our front palm to reverse our warrior. Biggest tendency here is that we start to straighten out through the leg, or that we start to dip into the knee. So make sure that you're pushing that knee outwards, finding length along the left side of your body. Try to avoid putting weight onto your back knee, so maybe keeping the arm higher or lower, or wrapping the arm behind you, grabbing onto your left thigh. From here, we simply cartwheel the hands down to the ground, pivot onto the back ball of the foot, push the ground away so that we can lift that front foot back without making noise, and we move through our vinyasa. Biggest mistake here, and you'll hear it in class all the time, is we swoosh our foot back. So really try to find that engagement where you pull the leg up, you round out through the shoulder blades, step back into your plank position, and we repeat the flow again. So you shift the body weight forward, bend the elbows, transition through up dog, back to downward facing dog. All right, guys, hope that made sense. Thank you for staying with me for this video. I look forward to bringing more of these breakdowns to you. Otherwise, I will catch you in my flow classes. Thanks so much. Bye.